into City Hall. In consideration of the continued rising numbers of COVID-19 cases in Cass County and the city of Raymore, the public is encouraged to participate from home. There is limited space available in chambers should the public wish to attend. The public can also view the meeting live by going to www.raymore.com/video. The public can submit comments at any point during the meeting by emailing Mr. Mike Ekey at mekey@raymore.com, and those comments will be read aloud at the public comments, section 11, part of the agenda. So I'll now ask Erica for roll call, please.
Councilmember Abdel-Gawad.
Here.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Berenson, absent. Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Circo.
Present.
Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Present.
Councilmember Townsend.
Present.
Mayor Turnbow.
Present. We have a quorum. Before we start the Pledge of Allegiance tonight, I would like to take a moment and offer a moment of silence for the officer that lost his life at the Capitol this week. We've been through a lot of tragic events here in the last week, and that is one that is being recognized with flags at half-staff. I'd also like to recognize that tonight in his passing with a moment of silence. Thank you. Now, if you'd all rise and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. We now have we have no presentations and awards tonight, but we do have a personal appearance. Tonight we have a Dan McMurtry. He's with the USDA Wildlife Services. And on page 83 of your packet tonight, if you'd like to refer to that, he is going to present to us on a request to use pyrotechnics for a bird deterrent. So I would ask Mr. McMurtry to step forward.
Hello.
Oh, that's right. He's coming to us on via Zoom as well. So, Mr. McMurtry, welcome. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. I'll try to be brief. My name is Dan McMurtry. I'm with USDA Wildlife Services. And our mission is to provide federal leadership in wildlife damage management. We work with other state and federal agencies, primarily on migratory birds, wildlife on airports, and wildlife on federal lands. We are a cooperative agency, which means that if we don't have a lot of federal money to spend, so we do charge for our services. We had a tower company located in Raymore that had a problem with starlings roosting on their tower. It wasn't causing the tower any damage, but the RV storage facility was a lot of droppings from the starlings was causing damage to the RVs. Last year, they hired us to help them, and we were fairly successful. This year, they hired us again. And of course, the winter has not been that bad, so the starlings are not as bad this year. We've been successfully harassing them off with other methods, lasers, just noise-making devices. But we try to do a very, very good job to everybody that hires us. And this type of harassment, the very best thing to use is pyrotechnics, which is technically firecrackers. We would like to be able to use firecrackers. If we have a bad winter here next 2 or 3 weeks, a lot more starlings will come to the tower site, and we're going to be struggling to keep the starlings off the tower. So I'm basically just asking permission to use pyrotechnics in a very limited means. Tonight, I was there tonight, and we would not have needed any pyrotechnics, but when the temperature goes lower, potentially snow is around, the starlings all flock to locations like the tower. They gather and keep warm amongst themselves, and potentially any electrical heat from the tower. And it's a little bit harder to keep the starlings off. So To me, it's a simple request, but I know there's more things involved about doing what I'm asking for. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, but basically I would like to be able to use pyrotechnics or firecracker type of devices to assist in removing starlings from the tower.
Thank you, sir. So at this point, is there a staff report that would, because I know there's been quite a bit of discussion among staff on this particular item?
Thank you, sir. The timing that would be involved with this it is not as, in consultation with the city attorney, it is not as simple as the council this evening just simply giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down to this. You would be making an exception to your code, which would require 2 readings of the code. If it was done on an emergency basis, it could be done prior to the end of January. If it was being done under a normal reading, it would be the first regular meeting of February that this would be done. If the council directs us, we can put it on the agenda. As you know, I do not like being a legislative obstructionist in any way, so if you want it on your agenda, we can put it there. It would come with a pretty firm staff recommendation against. 3 reasons for that. There are, as the gentleman has indicated, there are effective ways of getting rid of the birds without having to waive code. Number 2, I am absolutely certain that every single time one of these fireworks would go off, we might be hearing from the people in the 55-plus neighborhood that is due south of this particular location, and we would probably hear from them every single time one went off. And lastly, I have a feeling that if the code is waived for this, we may be opening the door to other fireworks requests. If you do it for them as a private group or as a public group, why can't we do them on January 1st? That concludes staff report on this item, sir.
Sorry. Does anyone have questions of Mr. McMurtry or the staff? Any comments, questions? Is there any appetite to move forward with allowing for an exception to code on this, or are we in a position that we really would prefer that they use alternative measures? Yeah, I'd say absent any comment, Mr. McMurtry, I don't think there's any appetite to move forward with allowing an exception to code. It would be quite different for us to move in that direction. And so given that there are other alternatives, and I know they probably come with a cost, which you initiated in your comments, that you really didn't have a lot of money to move forward with that kind of diversion program for the birds. But I would say that that our staff, with a no support position and no comments from our elected officials, is that probably will not move forward, sir.
Okay, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, sir. Now move on to staff reports. Mr. Fearborn?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Carteret to make a staff report for Development Services.
Thank you, sir. Couple of items to go over with council. First, looking at the end of the year report for building activity. A couple of numbers to go over. First, we issued a total of 554 permits for residential dwelling units in the city. That actually accounts for 6.3% of the total number of dwelling units we have in the city. So obviously the lofts, apartments are a big part of that number, but we did issue 136 permits for new single-family homes, which is quite a bit more than we had even last year. Another significant number to look at, we had a 72% increase over 2019 on the miscellaneous permits, and I've talked about that to council before that. During this year of 2020, we had a lot of our homeowners doing home improvement projects, decks, fences, pools, et cetera, to an increase of 520 permits over 2019. So a lot of residential building activity in 2020, and we're looking for a strong 2021. As we look at the calendar for upcoming meetings, we have canceled the January 19th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, but I do want to advise the council and the public, we do have a good neighbor meeting scheduled for Thursday, January 21st, here at Centerview. That's at 6:30. This is to consider a request for an expansion to our Alexander Creek subdivision. The developers, the property owners looking for the next phase of Alexander Creek. It would likely be the final phase, a total of 54 lots. So we are looking to meet with the residents to hear their comments about the proposed expansion of that subdivision. Again, that was January 21st. So that's currently what we have on the calendar for Planning and Zoning Commission and development activity. That concludes staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Carteret. Any questions of Mr. Carteret? Great report. Sounded like 2020 went very nicely despite all the pandemic and other things that went on in 2020. So we'll, unless anyone else has anything else for Mr. Carteret, I would ask Mr. Fearborn if there's another staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Carteret. I would ask Mr. Murdoch to make a staff report for emergency management on COVID.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn. Tonight, first, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with the council a quick update surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic, specifically here within the city of Raymore and Cass County. As the mayor mentioned earlier in the opening remarks, we had seen an increase in cases within Cass County. Within the city of Raymore, our cases have actually been relatively stable over the last 5 weeks. The high point for Cass County was actually the week before Thanksgiving at almost 150 cases in that particular week. Since then, we have been hovering right around 100 cases or so per week. It's actually just below 100 cases per week that have been happening here within the city of Raymore. Secondly, as most of you are aware, the federal government passed the CARES Act in 2020 that did distribute funds to our county. And then the county was able to distribute those funds here to each local jurisdiction. And we wanted to give you a quick update on those particular funds and then one of the issues with the second stimulus package that Congress recently passed. So when those funds were actually distributed to Raymore, initially the resolution that was adopted by Cass County would have given the city of Raymore almost $1.5 million in CARES Act funds. That number was reduced in August of last year as the county recognized the need for our local school districts to receive additional funds. And as a result, our final allocation was $1.124 million. Those funds have been expended, or let me rephrase, those have been applied for and we have been reimbursed by the county for all of that particular money. The expenses that we have used that money on include actual PPE gear and other expenses associated with COVID, but also due to the interpretation of Cass County, we were able to use those funds for first responder personnel. And so that's where a large chunk of that money also was able to be used. Recently, the federal government did pass a second stimulus bill, as most people are aware. However, there are no local or municipal funds that are currently available as a result of the second stimulus package. $160 billion of that particular piece of legislation was actually pulled aside and is earmarked for local jurisdictions, but Congress has to act on it with a separate vote. They have not done that yet. And as of this afternoon, when I checked the congressional record, there is no action that they are planning to take anytime here in the next couple of weeks on that particular money. So for right now, that money is kind of sitting in limbo that is technically earmarked for local municipalities. I did check with the county treasurer as well this afternoon to make sure that we were accurate on that. And he confirmed that same information, that there is no money right now for local municipalities in the Second CARES Act. The last piece of update is kind of what is probably dominating the news, which is the vaccine rollout across the country. I just wanted to share just an update for Missouri because it doesn't do us a whole lot of good, obviously, to look at the entire nation probably, but it has gone a little slower than what they had anticipated. But out of the 25 million doses that have been distributed throughout the country, we've had about 500,000 doses that have made it here to Missouri. We've administered just over 150,000 doses to frontline workers throughout the state. That number is probably just a little bit lower than what it actually is due to a lag in reporting as our local hospitals and stuff end up reporting it to their county, who then end up reporting it to the state, who then finally ends up updating the CDC, who then publishes those particular numbers. That number probably is getting closer to 200,000 as we get into later this week. Finally, the governor did announce that he anticipated that Phase 1A, which is all of our frontline healthcare workers, should be completed by the end of next week. And they are already starting to figure out how they're going to roll out vaccine to Phase 1B with the hope of starting administering vaccines to Phase 1B late next week as well, essentially as they are finishing up Phase 1A. One of the things we did want to alert the council to is we did reach out to the health department and offer the rack for any vaccine distribution or drive-through vaccine clinic. If the health department could use that to expedite any kind of vaccine rollout that we could do here in Cass County. And the health department did respond back that as they evaluate those sites for where they could hopefully do drive-through clinics, that they will certainly let us know if they could use the rack, and they were very, very appreciative of the offer to use that particular facility. It would work well with the massive parking that we have there as well to be able to funnel people through to do the actual vaccine. So they are going to continue to look at that, and the health department does anticipate having vaccine and being able to start distributing that to people within Cass County here this week, and actually then really ramping up the first week of February, according to the Cass County Health Director. So that is a quick update on COVID within Raymore, but I'm happy to answer any questions if people have them.
Thanks, Ryan. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Murdoch or any comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Holman?
Yes, Councilmember Holman. Mr. Murdoch, do we have any kind of information on, I know Chief Zimmerman got her shot because I saw the photo. How about the rest of our police department, South Metro, and Foxwood Springs? Do we know what the distribution has been there, if any?
I'm going to actually let Chief Zimmerman answer that since she was the one who was able to get her department signed up for that.
Thank you. And thank you for the question, Councilman Holman. We actually, it was sort of a last-minute opportunity that we were afforded by Belton Regional. There were some additional vaccination opportunities for first responders, and that was distributed to both Raymore, Belton, and South Metro. And so the individuals who were able to sign up, and we got that notification on Thursday to receive the vaccine on Friday. And so 8 of our folks actually were able to sign up. It was a online sign up, and there were slots available all throughout the day. And so I really can't, I'm not sure about, the folks. I know on the sign up sheet there were folks from both Belton, South Metro, and then, as I said, 8 of our folks who made it onto that list for about 30 or 40 doses that were available after hospital staff had received theirs.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything or any questions, comments concerning Mr. Murdoch's report? Mr. Serco?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I was curious on that part 1B. Can you give me a clarification how that will work?
So when the state of Missouri adopted their vaccination plan, so 1A was all of our frontline healthcare workers, long-term care, and long-term care residents. 1B is going to be any critical infrastructure, first line responders, and educators are pretty much the main group within 1B. There is no tier within 1B, meaning like they're not tiering teachers below first responders below teachers, that they're all one group. And so then each county will have to determine when they get doses, how they will get people signed up and get those administered.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Jacobson. Can't hear you. You're still on mute. Hit your space bar. Okay. Still not hearing you, sir. We heard you earlier.
Hold the space bar down.
When all else fails, reboot. So my question was, if with the number of doses coming into the state, do we have do we feel good about the number of doses that are coming into Cass County for vaccinations here? Because of course I get asked all the time about the vaccination and the rollout here in Cass County.
I would say, sir, that most of the county health departments would all want more doses at this particular point. It is based on population and then the hospitals within those particular counties getting the doses first. And so from an actual rollout perspective, every state in the country has actually received less doses than what they initially anticipated that they were going to get. And that does trickle all the way down to a county level of us still not getting as many doses as I'm sure that they would hope. One of the things that Cass County, unfortunately, is going to face with our health department is we do not have the ability with the county health department to host the Pfizer vaccine due to the incredibly cold temperature that it must be stored at. The health department does not have that capability. And so as a result, they are anticipating receiving most of their doses will be the Moderna vaccine that should be coming the first week of February.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? If not, we'll move on to Mr. Fearborn again, if there's any additional staff reporting.
Thank you, sir. Just want to remind the council that next week with the holiday, there will be no scheduled work session. That concludes staff reports this evening, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Mr. Fearborn? Hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Tonight, on our consent agenda, we have 3 items. We have the council minutes for December the 21st, the appointments and affirmations of membership to the incentive district boards, and the 2020 fire hydrant replacement project acceptance and final payment. I would entertain a motion to dispose of all or portions of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve consent agenda items A, city council minutes for December 21st, 2020. Item B, appointments and affirmations of memberships to incentive district boards. And item C, 2020 fire hydrant replacement project acceptance and final payment.
Thank you. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. This is Councilmember Holman. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. There's been a motion made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, could I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Abdelgawad,
Yes.
Councilmember Barber,
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson absent, Councilmember Burke,
Yes.
Councilmember Serko,
Yes.
Councilmember Holman,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson,
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0, and no dissensions, 1 absent. We'll now move on to unfinished business, the second reading. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3591 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3591 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, calling for and establishing the date of the general municipal election to be held on April 6, 2021.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve Bill 3591, calling for the April 6, 2021 municipal elections.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. This is Councilmember Holman. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. The motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3591. Any further discussion? Hearing none, could I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Abdel-Gawad?
Yes.
Councilmember Barber?
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson absent. Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Councilmember Circo?
Yes.
Councilmember Holman?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson?
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3595 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3595 by title only, an ordinance authorizing and directing submission to the voters of the city of Raymore, Missouri at the election of April 6, 2021, the proposal to authorize the imposition of a use tax for general revenue purposes at a rate equal to the current sales tax rate of 2.50% in the city of Raymore, Missouri.
Thank you. I know that Mr. Fearborn has additional information for us this evening, so Mr. Fearborn, would you care to comment?
Thank you, Your Honor. As I discussed with the City Council last week in work session, the Ibarra report that we did to get a third-party look at what our staffing needs were over the next 10-year period did but confirm the need for a number of boots-on-the-ground people in light of the phenomenal growth that we've had and in keeping with the level of service that we know our citizens demand. I had indicated to the council that I had not had the opportunity to speak with the department heads before last week's meeting. I have had that opportunity now, and I have each of the three department heads' recommendation and request for what they would like to see done with this first round of funding using the use tax. Simply put, the use tax will be used exclusively and only to bring on new personnel needed to, again, achieve the service levels that our citizens have come to expect. In the police department, the first recommendation would be to bring on one officer for each of the 4 shifts, so 4 police officers and 1 detective to add to the unit. In Public Works, the funds would be used to bring on 5 new maintenance worker 1s. In Parks and Recreation, the funds would be used to bring on 3 maintenance worker 1s and 1 facilities and event coordinator in recreation. The funding that would be associated with this, which matches up to our current estimates of what would be garnered from the use tax, which is $1 million that we are currently not collecting. In the police department, $445,000, $400,000 the entire general fund allotment, and $45,000 out of the capital improvement fund. Public Works, $300,000, $200,000 out of the transportation fund, $100,000 out of the capital improvement fund. Parks and Recreation, $255,000, $200,000 out of the park storm fund, and $55,000 out of the capital improvement fund. The numbers that are represented here, this is 5 of 20 recommended new police officers over the course of the next 5 years to get us through 10 years, 25%. 5 of 13 recommended for Public Works in the next 3 years to get us out 10 years, 38%, and 4 of 8 recommended for Parks and Recreation, 50% in 3 years to get us out to 10 years. That concludes staff report on this item, sir.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Fearborn? Hearing no questions, I would entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve the second reading of Bill 3595, calling for the April 6, 2021 online use tax election.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. This is Councilmember Holman, and I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. The motion has been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3595. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Holman?
this is Councilmember Holman. Just a question for Mr. Pureborn. Do you know, sir, off the top of your head, I know we haven't added much in the way of FTE in the past at least 6 years, and the ones that we've had, we've kind of jockeyed around and used existing positions. Do you have any kind of summary of what we have done or haven't done over that time period?
My intention is at the February 1 meeting to give you basically the detailed report, go through it with you, and also to talk about future plans. Obviously, we're looking at percentages that aren't 100% in each of these departments, and so would like to talk to you a little bit about how we would get there. In the past, the easiest form is we have not brought on any new, we have been at 100 FTE since we brought on 3 police officers 2011. So going on a decade now.
That's what I suspected. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? If there's no further discussion, could I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdelgawad?
Yes.
Councilmember Barber?
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson absent. Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Councilmember Circo?
Yes.
Councilmember Holman?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson?
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously, 7-0. We'll now move on to new business. Could I please have this is a discussion item. So the first item on our agenda tonight is the tax increment financing plans and redevelopment projects and a progress overview. This requires a public hearing. I will open a public hearing at this time and ask for a staff report.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Gress to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. Bear with me one moment while we get the presentation up and running. Just want to make sure that you all can see that before I get started. Can everybody see that presentation on your screens at home?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Each year, state statute provides an opportunity for the council to review and for myself to report on the progress of the city's multiple tax increment financing districts and their associated redevelopment projects, of which the city currently has 3. The Foxwood Village Shops Tax Increment Financing Plan, the Raymore Galleria TIF Plan, and the 58 Highway and Dean Avenue Plan. So I will get started here just to provide you all with some numbers and a summary of kind of the performance of each of these as of today. The first one we'll start with is the Foxwood Shops TIF Plan. The reporting period for all of these is October 2019 through September of 2020. The ownership of this TIF plan is still identical to that of when it was approved back in 2009. Currently, the status of this plan is inactive in the fact that it's waiting for further development on the land adjacent to Culver's. When this project was approved back in 2009, it was estimated that it would create 142 new jobs within the city. To date, with Culver's alone, has created 50. That number has not changed since I reported on this last year. Looking at the overall progress over the last 12 years of this project, and before I get any further, I'll kind of remind the council there are 2 different components to a TIF plan. The first one is what we call pilots, which is the property tax piece, and then there's EATS, which is economic activity taxes. So you can think of that in terms of sales tax activity for each of these. I'll back up again. During this reporting period, from the time I reported last year, this project generated $12,041 in pilots and $62,254 in EATS. Both of those equaling about a 13.5% increase from the previous year. The overall progress when this plan was approved back in 2009, the plan estimated that by the end of this project, it would generate $532,392 in EATS. To date, this project has generated $514,870 in EATS, so we're sitting right at about 96% of what was projected back in 2009. The pilots, because there's only one project that has been completed within this TIF area, that is a little bit lower. This project initially called for $270,610 in pilot payments. To date, it has generated $101,301, which represents about 37%. This project was approved for a period of 12 years. Its estimated termination is 2032. We will continue to monitor the progress of this over the next several years. If there's any questions on this item, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I will move into the next plan. Excellent. The next one, and undoubtedly probably the most complex, would be the Raymore Galleria TIF plan, which, as you can see on your map, has a total, several different project areas ranging from Sam's Club, Office Max, some of the retail strip center that you see, as well as the Golden Corral project, and then the undeveloped land on the north side of 58. The most recent project that the city saw with this project was back in 2014, which brought the Firestone Belfonte's Car Wash, which is now Go Car Wash, and as well as the vacant ground surrounding that property. That was approved back in 2014. Again, the ownership of this project is still identical to what it was back in 2005. Currently, the project is inactive. There are 2 fully operational projects within this area and 2 inactive in the sense that we're waiting for further development in this area. Looking at the job creation, back in 2005, it was estimated that it would create 153 new jobs for the city. This has created a total of 458 new jobs for the city of Raymore since its inception. Looking at the revenues for this project, to date, this project has generated $3.9 million in pilot payments for the city and $13.8 million in EATs as part of this project. Over the last 16 years, the development in this area has added more than $7.6 million in assessed valuation to this area of the city. And looking at the progress of it over its lifetime, when it was approved back in 2005, the developer anticipated a total of $13,042,419 in EATs revenue. To date, it has generated $13,826,386, which is 106% of the overall revenue that was projected to be generated as part of this. Looking at the pilots, again, this one is a little bit lower. $26 million were anticipated to be generated as part of this. We're sitting considerably below that at just below $4 million in pilots for the city. This area will hopefully be some exciting activity in 2020. As you all have seen, the Scooters Coffee broke ground on their project here within the last month, in addition to some other infrastructure work that developer has put in the ground. If you've driven past the site, unfortunately, you've probably noticed that the Golden Corral has been closed for a couple of months. However, that does create a unique opportunity. I've had several conversations with the owner of that site as well as the broker, Block Real Estate, on trying to work to find a couple different tenants specifically for that building, and then some of the undeveloped ground that actually exists within the parking lot as well. So a lot of opportunity there to hopefully capitalize on in 2021. If there are no questions on that specific project, I will jump into the last one. Doesn't look like it. Excellent. This is probably by far the one of the 3, the only one that the city can deem fully operational at this time. It was approved back in 2016. The ownership group here represented by Raymore Partners LLC, which is Cadence Commercial Real Estate, the original developer for the site. When it was approved in 2016, it was estimated to generate 50 jobs, and it has been confirmed that it did generate those 50 jobs within this project. So far, within the last 4 years, it has generated just over $29,000 in pilot payments for the city and $371,000 in EATs. It was a very active year for this site specifically with sales tax. This was probably one of the most better performing TIF plans this year for the city. One of the things I wanted to point out is that, again, when this was approved back in 2016, the developer actually projected that at the end of its termination in 2028, that the assessed valuation for the site would have jumped from $22,810 up to $878,000. Right now, just at 4 years into this project, the assessed valuation for that project is $872,610. So we are just below what their target assessed valuation was for the project. Looking at the revenue progress in the last 4 years, it was originally anticipated that this project would generate $1.363 million in EATS at the end of its termination. To date, we've collected $371,000 from that revenue, which represents about 27% of the overall total. In terms of property taxes, it was anticipated that this would generate $332,000, and to date, we've collected $29,405, which represents a total of 9% of that overall projection. That would conclude my staff report on all of those. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Before we move into public comments, is there any questions or comments? Mr. Townsend?
I did have a quick question. Earlier in one of the earlier TIF projects, I believe it was the first one, you said it was a 12-year TIF on the 2009 inception date. Did I hear that correctly?
The 12-year TIF plan, what I was referring to, that was actually the 58 Highway and Dean Avenue. So where the Mod Pizza, Qdoba, that was approved in 2016 with an estimated termination of 2028.
Okay, all right. So that's the youngest one, I would say, correct?
Correct. The rest of them were approved for a total of 23 years each.
3 years. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have anything? If not, this is a public hearing. If anyone from the public would care to comment, we do have a microphone for the few people that are here. If you care to make a comment on this particular item at the time, please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Others who are tuning in from home, again, I would reiterate that you can submit your comments or questions right now, and we will pause 2 minutes, but you can email those to Mike Ekey at mekey@raymore.com, and we will pause 2 minutes at this time for that. Or if anyone from the audience would care to step forward. Okay. Standing by. Anything, Mr. Ekey? Okay. Hearing no further comments, I'll close the public hearing at this time, and we'll move on to the next item. Next item, could I please have the reading of Resolution 21-02 by title only?
The reading of Resolution 2102 by title only, a resolution of the Raymore City Council approving the extension of the preliminary plat for the estates and estate villas of the Good Ranch subdivision.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Cataret to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. Randall Limer, who represents the Great Plains Developments, LLC, is requesting a one-year extension to the expiration date of their preliminary plat for the estates and estate villas of the Good Ranch. This proposed subdivision is located on the south side of Hubach Hill Road, just to the east of Brook Parkway, which would be east of Stonegate and east of the Prairie View of the Good Ranch subdivisions. I do know that the property owner is actively searching for a developer builder to purchase the property. Staff has met several times with a regional builder. It's actually a local builder developer that does work within the city of Raymore currently, and they are actively pursuing purchase of the property. What I do want to note to council on this subdivision, this is one of only two that preliminary plats that have been allowed to continue to exist. Most of the other preliminary plats have expired. This development does have an approved master development agreement, which is important because what it does is assures the city and the residents that the development does comply with all of our current development standards. So it does comply with our stream buffer requirements, our stormwater quality treatment requirements. And so for that reason, staff, in working with the developer and hoping that this property does get purchased by the developer we're working with, we do recommend that the council grant the one-year extension. That concludes staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Carteret. Any questions of Mr. Carteret? If not, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
move that we approve Resolution 21-02, Estates of the Good Ranch Preliminary Plat Extension.
Thank you, sir. Motion's been made to approve approve Resolution 21-02. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. This is Councilmember Holman, and I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. The motion has been made and seconded to approve Resolution 21-02. Any further comment?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Holman.
Councilmember Holman again. I would like to state that I get a little bit suspicious on some of these subdivisions that have been around for quite some time and continue to ask for extensions of preliminary plat year after year. And my usual follow-up question to Mr. Carteret is, what kind of building activity have we seen there for the past year or two? So given Mr. Carteret's comments, I am comfortable with moving this forward. Given his experience and his explanation, I'm very comfortable with this one tonight. Thank you, Mr. Carteret.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Hearing no further discussion, I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Councilmember Abdelgawad?
Yes.
Councilmember Barber?
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson absent. Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Councilmember Circo?
Yes.
Councilmember Holman?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson?
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries with a unanimous of those members present. Now move on to the next item. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3596 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3596 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute a quitclaim deed to the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for a portion of city right-of-way of 58 Highway west of Prairie Lane.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Carteret to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. The city of Raymore does own the right-of-way for 58 Highway all the way east of the city to Prairie Lane. And as most of us know, MoDOT is planning on making intersection improvements there at 58 Highway and Prairie Lane in 2021. This is one of two projects they'll have along 58 Highway. The Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission, as part of that project, is requesting that the city of Raymore transfer a segment of the right-of-way of 58 Highway to the state to allow the state to construct the improvements at the intersection. On the MoDOT projects, they do require all the land area for their improvements to be contained on property that is titled to the Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission. The segment of 58 Highway we're talking about is 550 foot from the center line of Prairie Lane to the west. So it'll only be that segment of roadway that they need to acquire the right-of-way from the city. Staff does recommend approval of Bill 3596. That concludes staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Carteret. Any questions of Mr. Carteret? Mr. Circo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Mr. Cataract, have we heard, going into 2021, are they going, MoDOT, to try to make this a joint roundabout venture on both at the same time, or take one, like Ward first and Prairie Lane second, when they start doing those roundabouts?
We heard the latest that we have, they've gone back and forth on it, council member. The latest that we have heard from them is they're going to try to get all of the pain done at once. It will be very painful because if they do both of them in 2021, we will also be doing Ward Road. So there'll be an entirely new traffic pattern established to the east side of the city. Should the school, I know that one of their thinking is, part of their thinking is that should the school district pass the bond issue, the school district is going to begin construction on the east campus probably before the end of 2021. And so they want 58 Highway to be, they want these in place before that campus opens.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else? If there's nothing further on this, I would entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend?
I move that we approve Bill 3596, transfer of right-of-way segment of MoDOT.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Holman, I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3596. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Holman?
Yeah, this is going to be a mess, and people are going to be frustrated and upset, but it comes with progress. And both of these intersections, we've heard Chief Zimmerman talk about it in the past, have had some serious collisions at them, and the need for the upgrade of engineering is as great as ever out there, especially with the potential or the possibility of a new school being built. So better to get the paint over all at once and get it done. These will be good projects when they're done, and they're going to make our transportation network out on the east a lot safer.
I would agree, sir. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Hearing no further discussion, could I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdelgawad?
Yes.
Councilmember Barber?
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson absent. Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Councilmember Circo?
Yes.
Councilmember Holman?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson?
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously of members present. We'll now move on to the next item. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3597 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3597 by title only, an ordinance reappointing Ross Nigro Jr. as municipal judge for the city of Raymore.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. Judge Nigro has indicated his desire to continue to serve as a municipal judge for the city of Raymore. Met with the city council last week in work session to answer any questions you all may have and to talk about the challenging year that our municipal court has had, most certainly. Judge Nigro currently makes $16,500 annually for his services to the city. I am recommending to the city council that you repeat the practice that we have in the past and afford Judge Nigro a 2.5% increase representative of his labor in 2019 and a 2.5% increase representative of his labor in 2020 to a new annual amount of $17,125. If approved, Judge Nigro will begin serving his next 2-year period, February 1, 2021. That concludes staff report on this agenda item, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember
Mr. Townsend?
Move that we approve Bill 3597, reappointment of Ross Nigro, municipal judge.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. This is Councilmember Holman. I'll second the motion.
Thanks, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3597. Any further discussion? Hearing none, could I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Abdelgawad?
Yes.
Councilmember Barber?
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson absent. Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Councilmember Circo?
Yes.
Councilmember Holman?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson?
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries with members present unanimously. We'll now move on to public comments. If anyone, I think we have 4 in the audience tonight. If anyone care to address the council at this time, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less.
Your Honor, would you also want to give a 2-minute period?
Oh, yes, yeah, we'll offer up a 2-minute period at this time, too, for public comments via electronically to Mr. Eke. Again, that email address is mekey@raymore.com. 2 minutes? 2 minutes till showtime.
I tried to queue up girl from Ipanema, but it just didn't
wouldn't
work
come
all
up, okay.
afternoon, sir.
2 minutes has expired. I would ask Mr. Eke if we have anything in the email box. Nothing there. So we will close public comments and move on to mayor council communication. I'll go by how my screen is showing here. So Mr. Burke, you're number 1 there. Why don't you go first, sir?
I have no words this week after January.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Townsend?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Likewise, I have no comments this week.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Circo?
Likewise, Mr. Mayor, no comments this week.
All right. Ms. Abdelgawad?
Nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Holman?
Thank you, Your Honor. 2 items. One, Mr. Fearborn, please pass on my kudos to the IT department. I don't know if everyone experienced the same thing, but tonight's presentation via Skype is much louder, more clearer, and Ms. Hill's microphone is working perfectly. It's not cutting out like it was last week. So whatever adjustments they made were really good. From my end, the presentation's been very clear. It's like I've been inside the room with you all at Harrelson Hall tonight. And number 2 would be, might I suggest Ride of the Valkyries as opposed to Girl from Ipanema next time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jacobson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, apologize for that earlier situation. My computer went rogue on me. You guys could see me apparently, but I couldn't even see you. So, it was interesting. First of all, good to see everybody back in 2021. As I was going over the agenda and everything, on the surface, a lot of it is standard fare, I guess you would call it. But if you look a little bit deeper, you see a whole lot of momentum going on here. As we talked this evening, extending the TIF areas. Of course, I know staff is working on further economic development. City of Raymore did a good job of holding its own in 2020 in spite of the economic downturn in the country due to the pandemic, yet the City of Raymore came through at least holding their own, thanks to you, sir, and thanks to staff and everybody else working on it. Now we have an opportunity to take that momentum and move it forward even more in 2021. And so we now have extended some TIF opportunities out there. The use tax that we're looking at, and I know we'll hear more about the need for FTEs, as we say, full-time employees with staff. But I think it's safe to say that Mr. Fairborn and his staff has done an outstanding job of holding the line with and keeping operational costs down, which also points to the number of outstanding employees at City Hall, because they can actually take on, extra work or maybe work that under other cities they might not have had. Speaking of that, also, I wanted to thank everybody for returning or continuing, if you will, their positions on the boards that we approved earlier this evening. I went through that. There's a lot of staff members on it, and that adds to the duties that they already have. So I was very impressed with the number of people we have working, and that's only going to make this city better. Finally, yes, I'm going to agree with Councilman Holman about the pain that we're going to feel on 58 Highway, but certainly much needed. And I know that when it's done, it'll be a much safer road. And when you add Kentucky to that, and then you add Prairie Lane and Ward Road, and then the improvements that we are doing to Ward Road, we are really doing everything we can to make this a safer city with the infrastructure for our residents. And I think that's, safety is always first for our residents, and as it should be. So while it looks like just kind of a standard agenda this evening, I think if you look deeper, you see a whole lot of momentum going on for 2021. This is an excellent start, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the year of that. So sorry for the lengthy conversation, sir, but I thought I'd make up for my fellow council members.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I would concur with the last couple of comments, especially with the audio. I used to have to turn my audio up and down depending if it was the remote people talking or the Zoom meeting side. So I didn't have to today. So whatever they did there, the balance seemed to be much better. But I just wanted to add that, looking at the building permit activity for closing out 2020, and coming into 2019 compared to 2020, we were up on absolutely everything except commercial new additions, alterations, which we were down just a few, and sign permits. But everything else was much greater. So that is so encouraging, and it sounds like 20 compared to 21 could be much better. So I'm really encouraged by that, encouraged with staff, our citizens, the people investing in Raymore. It's just a great snapshot to see what's going on here. So, and lastly, I just wanted to mention, happy birthday, Tom. I know that you're just a day older, but you do have to say that you are a year older today. So happy birthday. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. And I want to go on the record and wish Mr. Serco a happy birthday as well. I know we said that before we went on the air, but it's always great to celebrate another year. Anyway, also I'm excited, and I want to thank Mr. Murdoch for his report tonight. It's a very thorough report by our emergency preparedness manager. He stays on top of this and has from day one with the COVID situation. We all feel very confident that any new information is immediately distributed within the city, and Mr. Murdoch seems to be all over it. So we really do appreciate him and the work that he does in the department. That's really a one-person department, other than I know the chief and he coordinate pretty regularly on what's going on with that stuff, and she stays on top of it as well. But I wanted to thank him tonight for his report. And that's really all I have at this time. I think it is. Ditto to Mr. Barber's report about economic development. It's exciting where the city is going. And now that's it. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn the regular city council meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. Councilman Holman, I will second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded for adjournment. Could I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Abdel-Gawad?
Yes.
Councilmember Barber?
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson absent. Councilmember Circo?
Yes?
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Councilmember Holman?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson?
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned. Have a pleasant evening, and thank you for all the great work that you're doing.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
See you in 2 weeks.